What up, boys? Welcome to another Xibalba dev stream. Every other day, we're here. Not at the same time, of course, because that would be too easy. Today, I've actually been working on stuff with Veek for a while. Been working on some website updates to make everything magical and automated as far as actually generating web pages goes. So, surprisingly complex stuff, but it works pretty fucking well, so I'll take it. We're still working out the kinks. If you end up looking at the site at any point in the next 24 hours and shit's a little weird or oddly formatted, we probably already know, but you can spam us anyway and let us know that something's gone wrong. Obviously, there might be some actual legitimate issues that we are not aware of because there's a lot of web pages that we've built up over time. But to demonstrate the new work and to show why it's so valuable, I'll actually port an article from my Wikidot into the new environment very quickly on stream live, even though I've not done this at all, so I might actually embarrass myself, but I'm pretty sure I won't. So that'll be how we actually open up today's stream, and then we'll actually get into what we're looking at right here, the Keltar. We'll be taking a look at generating some more ideas for them. Welcome Veek, welcome Iron Torch, and welcome Roller Skates to the stream, and everybody who's watching but has not chatted or is watching after the fact, in which case I guess I can't say welcome to the stream, but you know what I mean. Let's get right into it. So first things first, for some reason, the site no longer works with my main browser as far as stuff like actually showing the table of contents. Don't know why, but we can take a look here. You can see this is all generated on the fly through our engine, through our Antikythera built this web page, if you can believe that. That's pretty funny to me. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. But we'll actually go through and take a look. So there's a certain number of things in the StarCraft section that currently link to Wikidot articles that eventually I would like to fix up and change up. So one of them that's linked in a few different places is the mapping starter guide, which is what we see here. As you can see, it takes a little while, even for this modern quote-unquote browser, to load the mapping starter guide. And so we obviously would like it to load faster. Whereas if now we were to go to example the mapcrap page, it's already loaded before I can even click on the link. And if we also wanted to do the installation page, oh, actually, it looks like the installation page here still links to the Wikidot one, which is pretty funny to me. However, if we wanted to go for this, oh, it's instantaneous. Yeah, that's how we like it around here. We don't like load times. So let's see how well our Markdown client actually handles this. This is Obsidian, which is apparently not even at version 1 yet, but it's working okay. As you can see, I've had to fuck my interface up a little bit just to make it readable, which is kind of frustrating because you have all this wasted space over here to the right, but I can't just have like a margin like a functional text editor. So this is how I had to instill a default margin. But yeah, we have inlining of documents and stuff. So we have local links like this. If I were to control click this, it takes me to a page where I've actually written out all this stuff. You can see our anime faces here for centering text that doesn't get picked up by Obsidian because that's our own custom formatting. There's a lot of shit that went into this. If you missed Veek's Antikythera dev stream yesterday, and actually the previous 2 streams were all about web dev stuff. So if you missed those, then you have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's okay. But suffice it to say, we can automatically generate shit with just a couple of batch files, which is pretty nice. So let's get into that then. So first things first, we got to actually make our file. I actually haven't tried making a file in this user interface. So maybe it's actually reasonable. If I were to open up the StarCraft section and then hit new note, okay, it puts it in the root. Hopefully I can reorder this. We would call this, what would we call this? Mapping starter guide. And then we can click and drag it into there. And now we can grab all this. And unfortunately, it also selects the table of contents, which is over here. We can get rid of that. And wow, would you look at that? It actually did load some of the formatting. So obviously, we don't want this. Instead, we'll do... there you go. This document is not yet complete. So this is... That means table of contents, by the way, the @ sign. This means center text. Start adding some shit to my dictionary. Bloviating. That's actually a word. I don't know. This spell checker, which you can disable, by the way. I've just enabled it because I do sometimes make typos, believe it or not. It does actually not function very well right now. However, the... Oh, yes. Okay, there's the image JavaScript stuff. We don't actually have support for censoring or, like, spoiler boxing stuff yet. That's not something I even remembered to ask Veek for support for, but presumably it would be possible. And then obviously I've got to correct some formatting things, like the underscores are actually underlines, which aren't normally supported by Markdown. But we have that instead of having two ways to italicize stuff, which never really made any sense to me. I don't know why nobody supports underlining without just manually inlining the PHPs or the HTML, whatever. Very strange. Probably because nobody knows what they're doing. Okay, so we've done that. We've put all this stuff in. These are external links. That's fine. And then... oh, it looks like I've centered all of this text. I don't actually know how I feel about this. I think actually instead of centering this, we would just make this a list of these points or whatever. Or we could do this and make everything a list. So we would do something like this. And then we would do... here we would just say... we'll say useful modding tools. And then... this is also centered. I think I just didn't like the left-aligned text on Wikidot. That's probably why. Yes, I am using tabs for indent. Is that something I should not be doing? Because I think that works fine. Okay. Good to know. So I don't know what the output will look like for this. I'll probably need to screw around with that a little bit. I guess I'll just leave that as a Wikidot link for now. Tabs are just a bit more consistent than spaces, but it will depend on what you're actually using. In this case, where Veek is referring to our own engine interpreting it based on specific cases. We can center that note. I think that's fine. So there's still some specific things that are fucked up, like the... there's like there's these like little margins and stuff that need to be cleaned up here and there. In most cases here, it looks fine, actually. Also, we should change this to that. And then if I go into the StarCraft section, I'm going to get rid of all caps for the titles. And okay, so I think this is actually fine. Nothing stands out to me as like broken. Besides, again, the images might get fucked. So we'll think about that later. However, now we need to find references to the mapping starter guide. If we go to the StarCraft section, you can see here. I did this earlier, but I didn't comment on it. Now we can say mapping starter guide. In this case, this is all I want it to say. Actually, I don't. So I want to give this a custom title because I wanted to lowercase it. Lowercase the other two words, because that'll make it like everything else. So now we've got a custom title. The stuff separated by a pipe will be used to show it. It's just like this over here. Yeah. And then I think there's also a few other cases where that's used. I believe the 116.1 installation. Hold on. Okay, it's not used here. Is it used here? Yes, it is. So we can do that. Okay. And then I think it was in the FAQ for Cosmonarchy Brood War. Yeah, here it is. Okay. I don't think there's anything else that, yeah, I don't think there's anything else that references it, but we might find something else later. So now, the big question you're probably not asking yourself is how do we actually add this stuff and put it in the right spot? First of all, we have to fix our groupie pranking us. Then we just run this generate_website.bat. And then we run this pull site.bat, which commits it, which is the slowest part of the whole process. And now, if we refresh this page, we'll see our changes went through for the caps. And then I will click mapping starter guide. And I will be taken to this new page. And I will see that I forgot to center view that text. Center that text. Let's see. The images are a little bit large. I forgot to space after this, which turned it into code blocks. And then I think, besides that, there's really seems fine. So we'll just go ahead and center that text. And then there was the text here that needed fixing. And then, yeah, the images are a little bit large. So, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Quote is fine too. Quote has a pretty hilarious margin beneath it for some reason. Definitely, if I ever wanted to use the quote feature, I definitely would want that to be fixed. But I don't have any use for it immediately. So yeah, these images will need, I don't know if they'll need a spoiler box. We'll want support for something like that. Anyway, a collapsible box, I guess you should say. The collapsible box is going to be useful for other things. For these images, I feel like we should probably just develop some sort of system later on where you can click the image to make it larger. And then, obviously, that would be something to do. So, okay, so now we've made some tweaks. We'll run the same batch files again. And we will spam refresh until it is fixed. There you go. That's fixed. And this is centered. And that's basically all we wanted to do. We did want to clean up the images a little bit. This is where I'll defer to Veek for this. I think if I do something like this, this is percentage. I don't know if that'll actually, I don't know if that's width percentage or what, or if that's a scaling percentage. We could just run that and see what it looks like. It might shrink the images to an appropriate size. Oh no, it actually made them larger. So I actually need to go lower. So we'll try 25%. We're still working out the kinks about the syntax and all that stuff. Okay. This is a little bit more reasonable. I suppose I could also do this as a link to the image itself in case people wanted to click on it. And then I guess we also have to add support for the, I think this is the syntax for the images as links, so I guess we'll find out in a moment. We would want to have support for something like, oh, these actually do open in a new window, which is nice. For some reason, I have the baby link. Oh, no, I guess it always does that, whatever. You will automatically link the image to itself. Okay, so I should remove that stuff then. That way we can have well, I guess we would, if you wanted to make the image link to something different, it would overwrite that, basically. So, okay, I'll just remove that note then, since you're going to do that anyway. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Obviously, it would be nice if these were like, you could like click on them to make them larger inside the same view. I think StarEdit.net, funnily enough, has something like this. If we go to StarEdit.net and we find our JBarino, and we find our, here's a campaign thread. So StarEdit.net has this, which doesn't seem to even function. I thought it was broken in this way, actually, because of my old browser. Well, my browser that is kind of deprecated. I thought this was supposed to just like sort of zoom out, but it actually just completely blanks everything else out. This might even be ideal in that sense. Maybe you do want to completely nullify everything, but having it be like upper center is weird to me. I mean, it's readable, I guess, but it's a bit weird, a bit wacky. Anyway, yeah, now this file is now on our website, which is pretty nice. So we can now find cases where we link to this. It's not just in the mapping starter guide itself. I think maybe the modding starter guide actually links to it. Maybe not. Okay, I guess not. But yeah, you can see just like that. I mean, I fiddled around with some formatting a little bit. I made some dumb blunders, but it's done. It's done. It's there. It's pretty nice. So yeah, if we go to the Mapcraft page, we can find where is it? The resources section, and we can say mapping starter guide. Oh, look at that. It takes us here. And that is something that I did want to figure out, is a way to specify that you want to open this image in a new tab. Previously, we could do target equals underscore blank in quotes, but that obviously didn't really, we don't want to have to inline that every time. So we'll need some sort of system for that. That'll probably be some sort of character after the image or whatever that gives it the target underscore blank property. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to think about that one. But yeah, so far it's looking pretty nice. Add mapping starter guide. So now it's obviously a very, like, what would you say? Oh, it's a default for specific links. So we need to make it the default for local link. Or no, it doesn't have to be the default, I guess. Maybe it shouldn't be the default for local links. I don't know. I feel like maybe it should be the default for. I guess you can just middle mouse click. So whatever. It's fine if it's not. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Who cares? We did it. The bottom line is we ported the mapping starter guide. It's on there now. Thumbs up. Big old thumbs up. And that was super easy. Like, it took a while to get like the Mapcraft page up or even the installation guide up. But that was just fucking trivial by comparison. So, you know what? I'm feeling it. I think we go for something else. I think we do the modding starter guide along with it, just so that maybe the miscellaneous notes. Who knows, right? So we'll copy this stuff in sections because obviously this one's a little bit more complicated. We'll say modding starter guide. And this is that. We don't need these. We can get rid of these. Okay. Can't forget my center view anime face. I remember as a kid, I actually used that emoji, that quote unquote emoji. Pretty embarrassing, huh? Oh boy, here we go. What's up, James? Have you come to muse on the unoriginality of yeah, there you go. That's it, the unoriginality. We can just get rid of these. It's probably fine. Ah! Well, I clicked on something and it sent me a error, so that's pretty good. That does not surprise me. I mean, I'm pretty bad at Warcraft 3, but it's not a game that really inspires you to be very epic about. You know what I mean? There was an extra set of brackets there this whole time, which is pretty funny. I must have like really confused myself. So I think this is the thread. Yeah, this is the page that doesn't link to anything anymore. And neither does the example config, so I guess I'll have to get rid of those. The Mega Mirror is almost certainly down by now. Or not down, outdated. So if I go to MTL, I guess we could... there are no releases published. That's interesting. So he never actually published MTL stuff. Weird. Yeah, it's unfortunate actually, because it's a pretty useful plugin, but it's kind of whack to try to link to, unfortunately. Never hurts to go click your links, by the way. I think this one was down at some point, but I don't remember if I updated it or not. Yeah, it didn't. Not on this page. I still have it in my account. So I'll just go and grab it. It's probably in shit, if I had to guess. I think it was originally in shit, and then I moved it to resources? Plugins and tools. Aha, here we go. This is probably the link that I used in my installer thing. So we'll use that. I don't know if this is still available either. It's not, so we can grab that from my Mega. That is in Oh, this is chain W. And then in essential plugins, MTL. This is probably the most most up to date fucking version that's out there, I guess, that's ready to be used, even if it's not the most recently built one. Oops, that's the wrong mega. And I'm guessing this also didn't survive because there's no link for this. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we fixed those. Yeah, that's there. And then this one. Yeah, okay. Those are all there. We don't need to change those. Oh, I actually, instead of linking to what I thought I was linking to, yeah, okay, that's me being a dummy. I thought I was linking to the installer there, but I was not. I was linking to IS debug. So that's done. I don't even know if I still... I'll just remove framework. I don't actually think it's that valuable. Hopefully this still works. Yeah, okay. I should actually mirror that on my Mega just in case. Okay. That's pretty easy. Close that down. I wish it would actually render the graphic, but I guess you can't have functionality and Python in the same sentence. At least not this fucking version of Python. I forgot how many actual images I supplied here. I really tried to make this one fucking foolproof. Don't worry. It wasn't. I really wish I didn't convert that stuff into arrows. It's really weird. I guess I won't bother adding those, now that I think about it. Alright. There we go. How many hashes did I throw on this one? Would be nice, actually, to be able to get access to the table of contents inside Obsidian. I can already tell you that would be useful. But, you know how it is. I actually made this specific tutorial because somebody kept asking me for this specific, like how to do this specific thing. And I was like, well, this is easy enough, so I'll just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. However, that even this one I don't think worked for the guy. So. Not because of me, but because, you know, some people are incapable of following tutorials. Or maybe it did work and maybe he just decided he was done afterwards. Maybe that's all he ever wanted to do in modding. Looks like somehow this got fucked up. Somewhere down the line. There you go. That should be everything for the modding starter guide. So now we just need to go into the... Actually, I don't think the modding starter guide is referenced nearly as many times, but if we do this, we can do... that, and then... I don't actually think there's any other cases where it's there. So let's push this to the website. And fire up Firefox. Go to New Frauds Club. Go to StarCraft. Modding Starter Guide. Oh. Hasn't been updated yet. I'm guessing that means that I have to pull on the site. And then do this, yeah. Will occasionally happen. Okay, here we go. Once again, I forgot to do my... that should be there anyway. But yeah, once again, I forgot to do my center text thing. Okay, we can definitely fix this up a little bit. I don't know if quotes allow for lists to be inside them. But actually, this is kind of weird that it's fucked this way. Oh, I guess it's because I actually did fuck it, didn't I? Yeah, this was never actually meant to be italicized anyway. Take a look at the code block down here. Oh, I forgot to indent the custom unit. I think I did actually have the steps highlighted in this. One line code is one, just like Discord then. Okay. Hopefully this actually sticks there. If that's the case, then I can actually go into the play section here. And I can replace it here. Because I remember there was a little bit of that there. Okay, now modding starter guide. Back here. Back to it. I don't think we need to have those on the TOC. All right. What's up, Lucio? The thing that's worse is probably... I think the clunky unit movement is worse because, like, professional careers were decided on that one, which is pretty embarrassing. Looks like it might be a touch difficult to actually read code in the one-line blocks. Even in this case, just because of the dark background, right? Not sure what we should do about that. Let's think about... This is a bit rough, though. What the fuck? I guess, unfortunately, Poiquirt's name was broken. No wonder this looked like a mess. I guess this is fine as it is. What's up, Loler? Check out my website, homie. Now you too can make a siege tank attack an air unit. Now there's some margin between the first item in a list and the previous line that needs to be removed for obvious reasons. I guess I should actually sprinkle these in the right spots here. I don't know why I didn't do that previously. Wait, did I do that previously? No, I just have everything from unit stat in that one section for some reason. That's really weird. Well, that'll make it look a bit cleaner. Yeah, that's better. We'll figure out some better formatting later on, but at least it's on the website and it should be functional. If Poiquirt's name was breaking there, then it probably also broke on the main Cosmonarchy Brood Wars section. Yeah, that's pretty funny. So I just need to escape out of the formatting. Court. The fuck? Alright. I guess I can quickly scan for any other cases where there's like an underscore somewhere. I guess not, though. Alright, so now we can go ahead and pull that onto the site as well. I wonder why it keeps... I think it was when I was doing this. I noticed that you'll see that it's like it's in large files. It's replacing like some files twice, like play and play, but one with capital, one with not capital. I don't know why that is. The margin, it must be above the first item in a list. Or I guess maybe it's the margin from a general entry. I don't know. Something's weird though. You can see that there's like this big gap here. And I'm not a fan. Thanks for the follow, Haas. Though you're probably a bot, judging by that fucking username. But I don't discriminate. I love all my followers equally. That is to say, not at all. Owned! Hey, you know, it's actually late enough that I can crack open a White Claw or something. And do so on stream. I don't think I've done that before. Or if I did, y'all didn't know about it. Well, there you go. We got another thing on the website, which is pretty nice. I guess I should just start closing down pages on here because it's not very useful, is it? It's not very useful without the actual elements of the site. So I think I can open up here. Go back to the home page. Go to Xibalba. Cosmonarchy. Resilium don't have an actual tech map yet. Okay. Yeah, we need to figure out what's up with this Gigunda gap at the end of each regency. I'm pretty sure that's due to the comments that I've added. Oh yeah, and I guess I can go in and add some other stuff here. So we'll say symmetry sickness. I guess maybe we'll just have a suffix already automatically appended, so I don't really need to worry about that. Now I can open these up. I guess I actually don't need to bother with these, do I? I can actually just take these and then add them to the concepts and then just close this window. I think that's probably it. Planning any Blender streams? That I cannot say I 100% am. I suppose I could. I could kill two birds with one stone. I usually segregate out my work so that if I'm blendering, which I've been trying to do every day, I'm doing it like when I'm not in the middle of time that would otherwise be going towards like conceptual stuff. But you know what? Maybe I will. One of the ideas that I had a while ago was that I wanted to basically set up the... I wanted to set something up regarding... I can't remember what it was. I think it was like a crest or something, like a logo for each regency. And I was like I was going to play around with some like geometry or whatever that would help me like figure out something emblematic, literally emblematic of each regency. That could be an interesting Blender project, I think. You'll see how easy it is for me to accidentally break everything in terms of geometry. I like the mirror modifier, but I don't really like that you have to literally like cut your model in half or your mesh in half. That seems a bit weird. Maybe there's a way to do that more elegantly, but if there is, I am not aware of one. Or maybe I'm like enabling something that I shouldn't be enabling. So yeah. I showed Vika a structure that I made a while ago. I mean, not a while ago. I guess it was earlier this week, maybe, or the previous week. It's actually listed as a hovercraft because I was originally going to make a hovercraft, but I ended up with this, which if we switch to render, we're not really getting too much light, actually. So. Oh yeah, I specifically made it so that the material preview wouldn't be very light. But you can kind of see that I was going to make a door cutout at some point, and then I undid it because it didn't look very good. But at some point, I'll have like a chamber over here. You can see this is kind of a long one, so there'd be like windows over here that maybe light up or something when it's active. Something in the back here, I'm not sure what the fuck this would be. Maybe exhaust pipes or something that would like jut out and go up into the air. There's ways to make this look somewhat interesting. Anyway, and you have these little edges down here that would serve as like a nice little safety rail that you'd like step on or whatever. I don't really have a good like thing that would demonstrate scale, but so I can't really show you like how big this would be relative to an average unit or something. But I'm thinking it would basically be something like I guess it would be kind of similar to like the factory in size. I definitely need some more detail, and obviously we need textures and stuff, which I don't have yet, but that stuff's for later. Stuff's for chumps. All right. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and pull the fix to this. Should see this change to symmetry sickness when it happens, if it works. Oh. Don't know what that was. Something Veek made. Ah! In my haste, I neglected to notice a bug that I had done. Boom. Yeah, we definitely have an unnecessary what do you call it? Margin below the headers of all sizes that should just get removed. That'll institute some other small issues down the line, but that's a bit easier to deal with. What's the hotkey for inspect element again? It's like Alt Q or something. No. Oh, it's just Q. Is it? The fuck? What the fuck is going on? Get me out. If it's something that you fixed or changed on the engine side, that's something I'm going to have to... I'm going to have to rebuild it and then re-pull it, which is fine. Pretty epic how quickly our engine builds and how quickly our website deploys. Anyway, it seems like the headers do indeed have margins, so don't know what's going on there. Okay, so yeah, we'll be back in a moment. I do have to go grab a drink, as I alluded to earlier, and also because I'm almost out of water in one of my 2 water cups. But yeah, we spent a fucking hour on website stuff. Great. I did not control F5. Aha! Seems to have fixed my problems. I guess I can go to the main Xibalba page and see if that resolved some issues. Indeed it has. Seemingly resolved problems. Very nice. We'll need to figure out some more stuff about this. Oh yeah, it looks like you fixed up the tabling as well. The whatever that was going on with the... Oh no, never mind. There's still a gap here. This is weird. Okay, let's take a look. This might be a good test case. If I jump into the index here... So we have product subsites with a margin, modding subsites without a margin, and you can also find us at without a margin. And they're all the same? Like, nothing different about them. Oh, one thing that is different about them is... Oh, no, even this is... The only thing that's different here is that this is a local link with a custom title, but I don't imagine that that would cause some issues, so... Oh, internally. Okay. So that's something that needs to be resolved or whatever. Oh, there's also 2 spaces there, which... It'd be really funny if those 2 spaces that for some reason Obsidian auto-generates, or maybe that was just there in the page, caused that. I'm guessing not, though. Yeah, probably. Oh yeah, and I should probably center this. Huh? That'll be our way to confirm that it even refreshed. Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll have to figure out what's going on there. But yeah, for the most part, that's obviously going to massively improve readability. Jump to NCFI here. Oh yeah, it looks like the same thing is happening here. Whereas like you can see branches have no margin, which is, but tech tree has a margin, which is, you know what I mean? Anyway, I do have to run real quick, so I shall return momentarily. And when I do, the world will change forever because we're gonna make some more Keltar. BRB. And we're back. All right. Let's take a moment to consider where we were at for the Keltar, right? So the Keltar were in a situation at the previous stream when we finished working on them, where they had a gob smacking. What was it? 9 units or no? No, it was like 1, 5, 8, 11 units. There you go. You pushed a fix to which repo? I guess I'm about to find out. What the fuck? And get command more. Git push. Okay, let's close out. Oh, I have to rebuild the solution. That's why. That looked like it changed quite a bit of stuff. Oh. Oh. All right, nice. We got all sorts of good shit out of that one. Obviously, this tells us that like certain things we're gonna need to put an enter beneath. Like if there was ever a case like this is pretty rare actually, a header that leads into a list, that was pretty rare. That didn't happen very often. But in such a case, we would definitely want to add an, and yeah, here's another case where it happened. It's basically like only in very, very specific cases. Okay. Beautiful. All right, so that's good. Well, I would hope it would do it always. But at least in this specific case, not having the line there seemed to have uh, given different results than having a line there, right? So I think that's fine. I will probably at some point want to go into, for example, the Xibalba section and actually make the main page thing. Like all of these sections might need to be max header instead of secondary. Not actually sure why I didn't do this before, but it's whatever. And now if I go into here, this is its own page. So that's fine to throw in. That's inlined. Yeah, I was thinking that maybe we would want some sort of something or other. We go to StarCraft. Yeah, we already did that one. And then I guess we probably want to undo that. Oh yeah, I don't actually have a news page. I think that was one of the only things I didn't import. So if I go to ignore, backup, Cosmonic Brood War, and I go to news, there was this index here, which does not exist anymore. Which basically did the print news function. It doesn't look like it had any content that I could have even copied over. So that stuff we'll just have to figure out. Right now, news doesn't actually do much, but I was going to add another entry talking about all the site changes. And then I think I was going to, this sounds a little disingenuous when I say it out loud, but I was actually going to go back and historically curate certain events as news, even though, and probably just add a note that says like this was actually written post event or whatever. In the interest of fairness, so people didn't feel like they missed out on something, but just for the sake of archiving specific events. So yeah, at some point we'll have to figure that out. That's fine. And then this is all like miscellaneous. So I guess we can check the formatting for the for symmetry sickness actually with this new system without the. Oh no, yeah, we already fixed that, or it was already fixed earlier. So yeah. Oh yeah, and then I actually need to go into, where is that? Cause Monarchy, Retail 1. So we don't have a navigation thing here, right? We don't have any way to control this yet, Veek? I'm assuming anyway. Okay. That's probably the next like big thing, along with collapsibles, and maybe you'll have some ideas for like better ways to format some of the documents that we have on the website now. How do you mean by not planning to modify folder names? Like ever? We probably would want to have flexibility for sure. Did this not work because I had to pull something? Maybe it didn't save because this is a prank program. Yeah. Okay, reasonable. No, it's still broken. What the fuck? Well, I'm saying like it should just inherit the structure that it's in, but if I move a file to another folder, ideally it would keep that. Or if I rename a folder at some point, ideally it would update it. Like you should probably be able to just read the directory structure of the Dreamhold or the Markdown folder, right? So so weird that the table of contents doesn't get updated here. Right. I guess the other thing I can do now is I can quickly run in here with bone and blood water, which is epic, by the way. Starstruck. Oh, that actually is a weird function of this program. Oh, it is working. Whatever. Pranked IMO. I have to do the same thing for the tutorial. I don't really like how this actually looks here. So maybe I'll change it at some point to some other system where it's like something that looks prettier. This is basic tutorial. Okay, this is chapter 1. Yeah, okay. Slightly more readable. Table of contents there. Once we get this stuff collapsible, that'll be really nice too. All right, back to where we actually were supposed to be, what we were supposed to be doing this whole time, what we've been trying to do, and not exactly owning at just yet. And close Obsidian for now. We don't need that open anymore. And can head on over to our. Wait, what is this? This should be over here. This should be in Xibalba and frames. Okay. So we wanted to do some more work on the Keltar tech map. Currently, we've got their tier 1 planned out pretty well. I do want to get a couple of infrastructure buildings added to tier 1. And then there's the concern about like something that's been kind of pretty consistent actually, is that you don't really have access to too many things in tier 1 in terms of buildings. So if you compare this to, if we go to Cosmonic Brood War, we click on the Terran, we find ourselves face to face with this stuff. You can see even in tier 1, you have access to Comsat, and then you've got bunker, watchdog, reservoir, and depot. Now there's no depot because there's no supply in Cosmonarchy, so that's fine. That omission makes sense. And we don't have add-ons for this Regency, so if they wanted some sort of scanner sweep technology, that actually makes sense to be in tier 2 anyway, some sort of like, high-end stuff. And then obviously besides that, it actually does follow the same principle, except the med bay is an add-on. So you use like a tier 1 tech structure basically that unlocks some extra stuff. That's pretty much the only caveat there. Besides that, you just have your basic defenses and you have your some utility stuff. So actually, when you look at it this way, it doesn't really look that weird, to be completely honest. If we take a look at this, we go to the Protoss section. This is where we get a little bit more involved because not only do we have supply plus power, static defense, utility structure, and supplementary production facility plus gas structure, you also have tech structure for each branch of the starting 3 that you have access to at tier 1 in terms of resources, because again, there's no tech requirements for buildings in Protoss. And then if we go to Zerg, it's a little bit more, you could say bizarre, but you still get your classic, 2 defensive structures plus utility structure like production facility or whatever. You got your creep structure, which is the closest thing you're going to get to supply because that's a unit, and you got excise and gas structure, and then you got your tech structures. So it's actually not that different, even though like obviously Zerg produces units a very different way, and obviously Protoss have a very different tech element as well with their like no requirement on buildings thing. To me, I look at this and I'm thinking like, yeah, there's actually there's not that much in the sense of like actual structures at tier 1. It is a little bit more consolidated here, but part of that is due to supply. Part of that is due to a couple of other things. Like you're never going to get to the point where you, well, here comes the fire engine. I am on fire. They're coming to douse me. What's up, JJ Builds? That's a name that's less likely to be a bot. Welcome to the police show. Okay, so anyway, obviously we've got some examples to go off of here, but if we jump back to the Keltar, or even the Ansifi, who have their gas structure and tier 1 defensive turret, this might actually be the blueprint for tier 1 buildings, to be fair. We were originally thinking probably about 40 structures. That is... right now we have 27 planned, or no, 28, because I added the Titan Hall. I remember that because for a while, the Ansifi were at 42 units and 27 structures. And 27 is significant because it's the difference between 42 and 69. And obviously that meant that we totaled out at 69 units. And that was not intentional in any way. It was just arbitrarily where I decided, okay, Ansifi are done. Nice. We can move on to Ember Seat. And, or Psychora. I think I went on to Psychora after that. So yeah, it's pretty hilarious to me that this is what we ended up with. Anyway. So yeah, we look at the Ansifi, like this is probably the blueprint for most regencies on tier 1. And then you want more shit to build or whatever? Okay, head into dispatch. It looks like the dispatch does not properly enable the canteen, which is a bit weird. So we go into dispatch. Yeah, I was worried about that. Canteen. I showed this off earlier, but I'll do it again. We make a change. We push a bat file button. So quick. So epic. Okay. So we're back here. For the Keltar, we can get their tier 1 defensive structure and their gas structure added, and that can be fine. We can actually jump into the reservoir and copy it over for the Keltar. We don't need violent detonation. As is somewhat customary for Keltar stuff, this structure is going to be meatier than the other gas structures in terms of durability. Surprisingly enough, it won't actually cost that much, but they don't have that much of a utility for hypervials in the early stages of the game. They actually don't need it for 2 of their ironclad units, and I think they need a tiny bit of it for skin daggers and a little bit of it for banner hands as well. I also still like that instead of like other regencies would have access to fighters and like tiny little baby ships and stuff. The the tier 1 units the Keltar have access to are like cruisers that are comparable to like tier 3 other things. They're just very expensive. So I guess we'll go ahead and pull this latest work from my man. How does this even happen? Oh, here we go. Oh, it actually didn't happen. What the fuck? Dude, I'm so confused. That is actually the one I needed. Okay. I can just move it into the ignore folder. You want me to push that? And then you can do the file operation. Or do you want to do that later on at some point? It doesn't really matter to me. Okay. Oh. Oh, did I? I think I get added and then get committed. Oh, yeah, no. I did. All right, yeah, it should be there if you want to do that. Let me know when it's done and I'll pull and rebuild. All right, so the Keltar are going to be characterized by their expensive weapons and frontal force. So you think of like expensive stuff in an RTS context, and you're probably thinking Protoss. The Keltar kind of represent a small sliver of Protoss elements, the sort of battle-born, fury, like battle fury kind of thing. That's kind of what an element of Protoss that live on in Keltar. However, they are very much more about like you could say primitive, more conventional weaponry. It's just that they take it to a ridiculous degree, and they happen to have innate brute strength, capable of dealing with different elements. Sort of like how the Ansifi are more physically imposing and powerful than the average human. The Keltar are kind of in the same class in terms of strength. And so their extreme warlike tendencies has led them to completely avoid stuff like stealth. They are not a stealth regency. Whereas you can do some sort of shadow operation stuff. You can do, obviously, infantry-focused stuff if you're in Ansifi. You can have some sort of specialists. With that being said, what are we going to do with the Keltar specifically? How are we going to handle that? The question really is whether or not we want to go any further with tier 1. I don't think so. I think tier 1 is actually pretty well done at this point, pretty well defined. Really, the only question is, are we going to move some stuff down to tier 2? And if so, what are they going to be? Like, am I actually really okay with having this unit, for example, the Patriarch, available at tier one, or even like the Storm Chief. You know, there's some elements of this that like are screaming out to me like, maybe this doesn't make any sense. These units are really fucking powerful. You know, what's going on here? And really, I think the answer to that is probably just going to be gating them behind more resources. I actually think it will be very interesting for a regency to have access to ridiculously powerful units, however, gating them even at tier 1 behind like absurd resource costs. That might actually be pretty neat. And so I think that's what's going to characterize the Keltar. And actually, some of the things that you'll get out of teching up are cheaper units, believe it or not. In certain specific cases. And the production facilities will at least build them faster at the very least. So you might get like a unit that's not that much more powerful than the Storm Chief, maybe has like some element that gives it a tiny bit of a twist, but you produce it a lot faster, right? And so that's the real threat. And maybe they're even a downgrade in theory in terms of individual strength, but they're produced a lot cheaper, so you can get more of them out onto the battlefield. And maybe they're nimbler, maybe they're faster, maybe that's the main improvement in them, and that's actually one of the ways that they scale up. And so that would actually give the Keltar a very interesting position because their units would actually scale somewhat well even from the early tiers. It would just be that it's more efficient to do so if you end up having like higher tier production facilities and can train these sort of like, the versions of the units, if you will, that are a little bit easier to move around or a little bit, cheaper in that sense or whatever. There's definitely going to be more going on there, don't get me wrong. And there's definitely going to be a ton of units that you don't have access to at all at the early tiers, like archetypes of units that are completely new and unique to specific tiers. But that's it is pretty interesting, I think, to model the sort of power budget increase of the expression of power of the tech tree, of the level of tech that you're at specifically, modeling that around not just like visual, like physical stats and or abilities or utilities, but actually about like costs and reducing costs is actually kind of interesting to me, and it's something that obviously we're not doing very much at all with the current regencies, even though it's something that I had planned to play around with. So that's going through my head right about now. I'm thinking about that. When you say try re-adding, you're gonna have to be more specific, because I actually don't know any git commands besides git add and git push. So bye. And if you mean like literally moving it back and then git adding and git pushing again, I can try that. Let me know if that's actually what you meant. Okay. Oh, I didn't need to do anything. That's epic. Oops. I already have you open, idiot. If only groupie functioned. Excuse me. Oh yeah, if you missed it, there was a Cause Monarchy Brood War patch today. Epic. Check it out. I guess I can quickly show what I'm talking. Why? Why? Why are these so fucking large for no reason? I actually haven't been able to recreate the freeze, but I'm pretty sure it still exists. And this I haven't seen in a while, but I'm pretty sure that still exists, and that's just a general note. So we got some new visual stuff. I fixed up some aspects of the munitions bay that were busted. Also, DF added a new work animation to the Stargate, which is pretty nice. I added in some new sound effects for various units. This is actually because DF mentioned that he had made some small changes to the sound effects and try to add like more unique stuff. So I figured, oh yeah, cool. I can actually edit those and use those. So the Acantor one isn't even edited. The Archon one is also not edited. At some point, I'll probably have to edit that to composite it, because right now it uses up 2 sound channels. And then the Matroleth one is a composite from me, with combining the sound that was unused by Blizzard with the one of the pissed lines that obviously players are probably not very familiar with, because nobody clicks on their units in the middle of playing a game. We fixed an issue with that was interacting with AI kiting, where there was an element here where the ground and air weapons were not being uncalculated if they did not exist, which was obviously a problem. And then there's the charlatan weapon name. That's just a visual bug. Small shrinking of collision here and there. And then increase the sight range of Mutalisk on the Ultra Core to 8, because I figured why not. There's more of an intuition change than anything. And yeah, the biggest thing is that, well, the biggest thing in my opinion, even though this is probably the biggest thing, the AI kiting thing, this is pretty nice because the Star Sovereign bug was pretty annoying when I found it. So that's been fixed. There you go. Yeah, well, Fagudo mentioned that the apparently it uses more RAM than Firefox does, so don't know about that one. I would like to know why Ice Dragon just stopped working. Like, it's pretty whack. Maybe now that I've completely closed it, and no, it's just still broken. See, like the table of contents is just missing completely, which is pretty funny. I don't think there's been an update to it in a while, so I don't know what's going on there. Maybe after my computer restarts, because I haven't restarted my computer in a while. Maybe that has something to do with it. Okay, we can close that. So, obviously, we were starting to work on the Earth Mound. We didn't actually give it a little tagline here. We can say, oh, this could be a kind of an interesting one. So, I was actually thinking that maybe like the Keltar could have some sort of, for lack of a better term, they have this sort of tough guy culture, right? Where they, you know, it's very common for them to just like fight amongst each other for the like just as like a little like personal conflicts. I'm not talking about like wars between clans or whatever. But Keltar individuals will fight amongst each other just to settle disputes, you know? And it's just very common amongst their culture. And they do enjoy the whole like they think they don't enjoy pain in a sadistic or masochistic sense, but they recognize value in suffering and in going through a low point so that you can come out the other end stronger, right? So it's like a weird combination of discipline and like the stoic point of view of like when you suffer, you eventually grow stronger. You're presented with an opportunity to grow stronger, basically. That's sort of like the mantra of the Keltar, you could say, if you would try to distill it into something that we could understand. So, as a result, I'm kind of thinking that, okay, this is crazy. And by crazy, I mean epic. I'm thinking that Keltar workers generate fury while they're mining because it's technically a weapon thing, a weapon interaction. And so they get a shield. They build up their shield while they're mining. And then, now, hear me out. I'm also thinking that their gas refinery, their hypervial refinery, doesn't actually process the stuff, and that the hypervials will damage them while they're being attacked or whatever, or while they're carrying it. Now, theoretically, because you're mining, right, you're generating the shield. Under normal circumstances, this won't actually impact you. But if you're distance mining, it will. And if you're under attack, it will. If you're being harassed, you can tag somebody who's carrying a hypervial, and instead of damaging its shield, you've broken the shield. So, you know, okay, now they're starting to get damaged in the HP. It's kind of a niche argument, I guess you could say, or a niche interaction. But I like that because it's almost like the idea is like it reinforces some critical aspect of the Keltar thematics, like a central aspect of what they are. In my opinion, that's actually what it does. And so I actually like the idea that there is no further purity. However, I think maybe we could have a trade-off here where there's got to be some. I don't. That doesn't have to be. I think it would be useful if there were some trade-off for what it actually provides. And so I think this one. So either the Earth Mound, which is just again, all of the names are like potentially subject to change, obviously. Either this refinery has a weapon attached to it, which would be the obvious way to go if you wanted to make it all about like gun-toting lunatics, right? If these guys are meant to be the warlike regency, even their fucking gas processor, their secondary resource processor, even that has a gun on it. That could be interesting, right? So you could do that, or I was also thinking about making it a garrison, like you could garrison the structure. That would be a little bit more interesting, probably. And what else? So that you're basically staking your claim with it instead of actually like refining hypervials. You're building it not for the purpose of making hypervial harvesting more safe. You're actually building it to like lock out other regencies, like hostile regencies, from harvesting from your stuff. And also to further that, you get the garrison idea, which allows you to load some units in and give them the excess range, and stuff like that, right? So, or whatever the case may be. I'm not actually sure if garrison units will get extra range. I think that's only a trait of specific cases, but they'll be able to shoot from within, and they'll be protected, which I think is pretty neat. So yeah, you could start to see why this would be useful, in that sense. So instead of Earthbound passive, we can say it doesn't have an ability. Oh no, it does. It would have the common garrisonable, and then protect your patch of land. I can't remember if I have. Okay, I don't have punctuation marks. Let's close that. Abilities, Keltar, common. Just want to make sure it's garrisonable. Sure is. And then we can make the weight capacity something like 6, maybe 5. And then it makes sense for it to be kind of cheap because it doesn't actually offer you much in terms of utility. You already are harvesting hypervials by itself. And then it even makes more sense why they don't actually require too many hypervials. They don't stress it in the early stages of the game at all, basically. So it's actually kind of interesting as far as how they interact. Like they actually prefer, heavy magmite areas, magmite only expansions, if you imagine. Oh, that's the totem. It doesn't exist in there. Grab the sightline. So I've made this a very tanky defensive structure, but I think I'll make it easily outranged. Like I think it'll just have 6 range. It's pretty light for something like this. I got a cheeky idea for what we can do for the For the icon, we can use the raised up photon cannon frame. I'm not sure about the closer they like the minimum range thing. That's a bit of a weird one for me. I guess it definitely makes sense in some specific cases, but I'm not sure about how, like, I don't know how often I would want to use those cases, right? Totem! It's gonna load so much faster than this when we have, what do you call that? When we have the C generator, will be epic. I guess I can check this. Okay. It's fun. And then obviously I have to go into the backbone. Add the earth, mound, and totem. We already have code for that in Brood War, actually, so pretty easy. When Veek did the kiting AI for Cosmonarchy Brood War, he added in eventually the code to have units try to run into siege tanks, phalanxes that are sieged. It doesn't actually work all the time, but none of the code does because he's fighting the default AI unit management, so it's kind of annoying. I think it's at least resolved some of the issues about like units not actually attacking each other if they were hostile AI, like walking past each other. They used to happen all the time. And I can't remember the last time I've seen it, so I think that particular bug was fixed. But like the difference between how the AI micromanages in Cosmonarchy Brood War and regular Cosmonarchy. The difference between those is like it's gonna be night and day when you check that out. So, what's up, Shamble Man? Welcome. Yes, indeed, a late stream. That's just the way it is, ain't it? What the fuck? Today we're just doing some more Keltar stuff. Earlier, I was messing around with the new website integration. All of the web pages, besides the tech maps, which are still done through PHP, all the web pages with text on them are handled now through our engine, through Markdown source files that our engine converts into PHP, HTML stuff. And so far, it's been pretty good. You know, it's been giving us a real, it's been a real treat. I'll say that much. Particularly with how trivial it actually is to add this stuff in. So, oh yeah, I have to build prank. Now I can generate the website, pull the website. Ah, beautiful. It does seem to have created a space at the top, but I don't know if that's because of this. Oh no, this isn't even the same thing. Yeah, it looks like the margin here is... Yeah, that's definitely new, so that would be nice. Margin is there above the logo. After this change. But yeah, anyway, we've been working on some Keltar stuff. I already added their refinery structure and their tier 1 defensive structure, which puts them in line actually with the NCFI. So we'll jump down for tier 2 now. And I was discussing with the chat earlier the concept of having, basically, as you progress down the tiers, some things obviously are introduced. And at their baseline, the Keltar units are incredibly expensive, but also significantly more potent in terms of one-on-one combat than pretty much any other Regency. Like, their power is pretty difficult to match. If you go tier for tier, they are the most strong Regency out there in terms of tier for tier units. Like, if you had equal numbers of tier 2 units or tier 1 units of Keltar and equal numbers of tier 1 Ansifi units, for example, there would just be no fucking contest. Because if you look at some of their units, like the Storm Chief, like this guy is sort of kind of like the Paladin, in that he fires off a salvo of missiles. It's only 6 instead of 20, so it's not really the same thing. But you kind of get the feel that this guy is like all about crowd control. He's shoving out a whole bunch of missiles per attack. He's got a pretty reasonable cooldown of 2 seconds, so that's also less than the Paladin was. If we went to the Terrans and actually clicked on the Paladin, we would see that it was 3.125, so basically a little bit over 3 seconds. Obviously, this guy attacks orders of magnitude faster as a result, but it also deals just less damage in general. His projectiles also move fairly adequately, like average missile speed, basically. But this guy's tier 1. Like, this guy is tier 1, a modest cost. Yeah, it's pretty heavy in Magmite. That might even increase. and pretty tanky. 4 armor at tier 1. Like, these guys are durable as fuck, deal a crazy amount of damage, and are available very early on in the game. That's basically true of a lot of the units for the Keltar. Their weakest unit is the melee attacker for them, the Disciple, and even he has 80 HP and 1 armor. Whereas if you look at the Accomplice, okay, there's no armor on this guy, but he's got 60 HP. That's even probably going to change. He's also got a short-range weapon, so I'll probably just give him 1 armor or something. Then you got the Skin Dagger. This guy's survivability comes a little bit more from his mobility, which you'll notice from his passive, where if he's traveling alone, he's got this sort of lone wolf sort of approach. I think maybe his damage might need to be increased or something, but we'll see about that. And then the Banner Hand is pretty durable for a tier 1 infantry unit, and also has this passive. Oh, and the little note that I forgot to mention is that all of the units that the Keltar have gain this passive called Blood Heritage, where every time you deal a point of damage, you generate a shield with the same amount of damage that you dealt. So if you deal 5 damage, you get a shield for 5 damage. I don't know what this cap would be at. I think it would probably be whatever their HP was. So like they can get the same amount of HP as bonus HP as what they have, which sounds like pretty high, but that's just the way it is. Like, if you get these units really ramped up, they can become very, very difficult to kill. And that's why we're looking to gate a lot of their utility out of their numbers. And so the Keltar are going to be one of the least numerous of the races, of the regencies of Xibalba in tier 1. Maybe the least period. Forget about the ones that are going to show up later on. And when I said tier 1, I meant like the retail experience, not tiers of game. It was just me confusing my words. So you're thinking about like, what are the defining characteristics of the Keltar? It's like when you see 5 units, you don't think, oh, that's only 5 units. You think, oh, fuck, that's 5 units. Because that's the reaction you should be having. If I'm playing my cards right here. Like, you see some dude walking up with a couple Storm Chiefs. You don't think, this guy's only got 2 walkers. What an idiot. You think, oh, fuck, this guy's got 2 walkers. Like, the word only does not engage in there. You think, thank God it's only 2 walkers. That's what you think. Because if it was any more, if it was the magic number, death. So yeah, you say it reminds you of Halo Brutes, sorta. I didn't think about that influence, but maybe it did have some sort of subconscious impact. The idea, like Halo Brutes and Halo Elites always had similar like actual strength in game, in terms of like their physical power, how they were represented. But yeah, I think in the lore they were a little bit more like powerful physically or whatever. That was like one of their claims to fame. It's just that in game they never actually played all that differently. I guess maybe they would have been slightly more aggressive, but you pop the shields of an elite, he does the same fucking thing. So it doesn't really translate to a massive gameplay distinction. So if we look at this, we look at the Keltar, like they're going to be coming at you from the word go, basically. Like their basic units have pretty powerful weapons. Now they don't have the most amount of what would you call it? They don't have the most amount of the armor pen. That stat is not really with them massively. But they do have pretty high damage, so it almost doesn't matter that much. Yeah. Well, I was talking about this earlier too, but the Keltar are kind of like in the same boat of physicality in terms of raw strength as the Ansifi are. I think you'd probably still see a Keltar win out, but it would be a fairly close. It would be competitive, and like maybe it's like a 60-40 or 70-30 kind of thing, where like a decent and non-negligible amount of time the Ansifi would be able to overpower them in a 1v1 fight. However, the key distinction is the Keltar are not sexually dimorphic, so they don't have females, so you don't get the same element of like, oh, some half of my population can only be like spies and fast units and stuff like that. They don't have the same physicality as my males do. So if I want to serve them, have them in the military, then they've got to perform different, more specialized roles, like the waylay, which is jumping around and trying to do like more surgical harassment strikes and information plays and stuff like that you'll see out of the female Ansifi. Or they need equipment. They need to be like in a mech or something, right? So you don't really have the same element there. Whereas the Keltar, they don't have that problem, if you would call it a problem. They don't have that same limitation, so they don't have to build around that. In fact, I was kind of playing around with the idea that Keltar don't actually have a size restriction in the same way that you would normally see. So, like, I don't actually know how to justify this science-wise. There probably is no way to justify this science-wise. But I did like the idea of the Keltar being able to grow, like instead of being sexually dimorphic, they would have differences based on size, and those size differences would be very pronounced. Like to a human, it's kind of different if you're like 6 foot like I am versus like 4 foot one or whatever, like or whatever the lower cutoff of like dwarfism is. Um, I was thinking that like either they just keep growing or their size, like their max size after a certain age is like way higher or something, or they just happen to vary so much more radically than we do in terms of size. I'm not 100% sure what would make the most sense. It might be a nice storytelling tool if you end up having like the Keltar grow in massive sizes or whatever. Um, yeah. So on the topic of whether or not regencies or generally like races in the universe would be sexually dimorphic, there's not really any reason to suspect that it would have to be a requirement. There are certain advantages that it confers, but if your biology and physiology plays by completely different rules anyway, which it might and may very well be, then like you might not even have a conception of gender. Like you might just not be a sexually dimorphic species, which is basically what the Keltar are. So yeah, I mean, orcs in 40K, I actually didn't know that that's why they were so big. I assumed that they just like took fucking steroids or something, to be honest. Like eventually some of them would get bigger. But I guess that accounts for why they're so big. Yeah, the Keltar could basically be one of those things where like they, it's not, it's not directly that they won more battles and therefore they are bigger. It's more like they survived more battles theoretically because Keltar are so warlike that it's a given that the older a Keltar is, the more battles it survived, right? So, and I'm probably going to use he as the pronoun for Keltar pretty often, by the way, just because they will sound very masculine, you could say. But that's not because they're actually male, obviously. So that's just like people saying he to refer to cerebrates or whatever. Those noobs. So yeah, I'm thinking at this point, like the reason why I brought that up, is because not only did I like the idea of like supersized fucking men for the Keltar, but I really liked the idea that their ironclad branch, when it included walkers or walking unit, like walker looking units. So there's definitely going to be some armored vehicles, right? Like the Overturn, for example. This is an armored vehicle. But I really like the idea of like the Storm Chief even being just this big ass fucking Keltar walking around with like giant missiles and stuff. And like missile salvos like attached to it, wearing an exosuit basically. Just happens to be like 3 or 4 times the size of your Keltar infantry or something. So you can kind of get where I'm going there. It's like, it would be really cool if when you say ironclad, you're not using that as like a euphemism because, oh, they're inside armor. No, the armor's on them. They just happen to be the size of armor. They happen to be the size of tanks and shit, you know? And I think that could make for some really emblematic elements of the fight. Now, the one drawback or cause for concern is that I did plan something kind of similar for the rune. Not in that they would just grow massively, but that they like incorporate technology into them. They're very organic. They're very fleshy. They're very pinky. Yeah. Well, you're male, female, and 3. The third gender is just called 3. But yeah, where was I going with that? The rune are a little bit kind of like that, where they don't like grow massively and just based on age or whatever. I think the rune would probably actually grow massively based on like actual consumption. Now that I think about it. So the rune would have a different mechanism for it, but I think I'm wondering if it would result in the same thing in game basically, because that's what matters more than like the story framing. If it's functionally the same, then like players are going to feel like maybe these regencies are a bit too similar. I think the fact is that the Ironclad branch will be where this stuff is localized for the most part. And the Keltar side of things will use this to limited degrees, whereas the rune will probably use it more. So that'll be like the degree to which it impacts the tech map and the number of units that have that trait is going to be different between 2 regencies that are completely separate. And on the topic of like how big could they get or what would be the max size or whatever, obviously they wouldn't be able to grow, like logistically speaking and scientifically speaking, that you can't just keep growing in the same proportions. It's like double the height is quadruple the width or whatever. So you saw this shit in like Attack on Titan, I guess, I haven't watched that, but people use that as an example sometimes. I guess the giants in Game of Thrones are another thing. I haven't watched that either, so I don't know. Um, but basically, like big ass things, like dinosaurs, even, right? Like you had to be way thicker in order for your bone structure to actually support. And after a certain point, your bones actually can't support your weight if you get too big. So that's like the part where I said at the beginning of this whole conversation, does this make sense scientifically? And probably not, unfortunately. But I do like the idea that maybe they would have some sort of technological way to stabilize that and to allow them to do it. And basically, it would be seen as like, you know how we have age lengthening processes now. We've got like stem cells and we got all sorts of biotech that can extend your lifespan and your health span as well, not just living, but living healthily. I like the idea of them basically, they would grow this way. And they wouldn't grow magically. They would grow in the way that like, oh yeah, you're adding a lot more weight to get higher, to get taller, to get higher. No, the weight is in grams and it's not of you, it's of a plant. But you would imagine something like that would basically be seen as life extending technology, because by default you would grow to a certain point and then your body would eventually shut down because it can't support and sustain the weight anymore. And so that would be seen as their version of old age. It'd be quite painful, I imagine, and quite maybe gruesome and horrific. But you would imagine that maybe like they would, at this point, they would have ascended to some degree of technological supremacy and power that they could actually extend this and support it. And so you would see these really mammoth things, these really mammoth, Keltar creatures, if you will, having lasted a very long time, and it would add a little bit more of extra significance. Yeah, I mean they can regenerate their bodies very easily, their tissue. They can't regenerate bone as well, but they benefit from regeneration in terms of like if you like carve a fucking like if you stab them or something, if you don't damage the bone, they'll eventually regenerate it pretty quickly. But the idea of like needing cybernetic implants or some sort of technological augmentation to allow them to grow to a certain size, I think is pretty interesting. It's not something that I have planned either aesthetically or in terms of like mechanics. I haven't planned that for really anything else. The Rune have biology mixed with technology, but the Keltar are a little bit more conventional in theory. I talked about this earlier as well. The technology that they employ is very much frontal and conventional. So it's kind of like the Githrovan have a lot more like the Githrovan and the Keltar are going to be linked irreversibly or intrinsically, not because of some in-game narrative perspective, but because people who are primed to think of things in the StarCraft standpoint are going to see elements of Protoss in both the Githrovan and the Keltar, even though they're not going to visibly resemble them at all. Although maybe the Githrovan technology might be a little golden here and there. But it's not going to resemble like Protoss in that sense. And they as individuals, when you strip away their technology, Githrovan and Keltar look completely different than Protoss, and completely different than one another as well. But the reason why they're going to be linked together in that sense is because they are both like these, theoretically, they're very technologically advanced. They've engaged in a lot of warfare, and they bear certain aspects and traits of what Protoss bore in StarCraft. So the Keltar represent like the battle tendencies, the battle fury, the fact that they were eager to fight, the zealot, if you will. The Protoss zealot is represented by the Keltar. And then you've got like the Protoss High Templar or something represented a bit more by the Githrovan. Not the flowery, like I'm going to die type, but the type where he's able to use more than just raw technology to defeat you. And so the Githrovan have impressive technology, but they use that as just an element of their tech branch. They don't have that as like the front and center. And the Keltar don't really have impressive technology in the same way. They don't have like imperious technology that's massively advanced in the same capacity. They're not using plasma to the same degree. They do use it a little bit, but they don't use it to the same degree that the Githrovans will. That's just one example as well. The Keltar use missiles. They use kinetics. They use like very conventional, familiar to us humans and familiar to even the Ansifi weaponry. And that is how they get ahead. Not by terms of like making stuff that's more advanced, straight up just by smashing shit, right? Like literally just winning by virtue of like raw brute strength. And so the Ansifi are a little bit more, you could say, balanced in their approach. So they have the raw firepower, but the Keltar put them to shame. And the Keltar make it a point that everything that they have is meant to put other Regency's technology to shame, not in complexity or fancifulness or like bizarre effects like the Psychora, or whatever the case may be, just straight up in terms of firepower. Like, again, like I said earlier, tier for tier, unit for unit. If you have equal Keltar units to your opponent, you will win the fight unless they do some really wacky shit with their abilities or micro or something. Like if we're just talking A moves, we're just talking weapons. Obviously, there's a lot more to their RTS than that, and that's why they're still a useful and interesting aspect, and why they're not just straight up broken. The Keltar are going to win fights, though. But yeah, Shambler. That's basically what I was thinking regarding the way that they are able to extend their lifespan, because their life, it wasn't that they died of old age. It's like you said, they died of getting too large. That was their quote unquote old age, and then they realized, oh, that's what's keeping us, limited. Their scientists would probably recognize that actually, a long time before they were able to eventually get advanced enough to stop it, and that would have led to their research in the field. Like if you think about it now, people are starting to ask the telomere question about humans, and that's leading to people eventually figuring out, oh yeah, we can actually like hopefully we can stop this from happening, and then we can maybe even reverse aging, but at the very least stop aging. You know, so we're finding out the limitation and then investigating the problem. The same thing would have probably happened with the Keltar. I can imagine the idea of like replacing bones with metal. That's obviously like the way my mind immediately works on that. I'm thinking of like X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is a very embarrassing film if you guys haven't seen it. Wait, what was this? But yeah, I'm thinking of like I'm really liking the idea of like the Keltar society, like some pure bloods, some sort of like, what would you even call them? I guess prudes. I don't know. There's a term for when you're a Luddite, a term for when you're like not interested in technology. You could have some Luddite Keltar, basically being like, huh, what are you, some kind of metal bone or something like that? Like he's fully metal bone now. Like the Keltar don't really talk like that. Obviously, they don't have the same conception of like high rise, highfalutin stuff. But maybe there could be a legit thing where it's like, oh, he's already undergone his surgery to become fully metal bone, and now he'll soon be, grow to insane heights or whatever. Like they might even do this weird thing where like some of them would choose to get like a growth inhibitor, and that would stop them from growing up to ridiculous sizes, and then they wouldn't need the metal bone surgery or whatever the process is. But I imagine there could be like sort of like how humans obviously have the weird shit that they get hung up with, like, oh, you got tattoos, you fucking weirdo, or whatever. Like we get weird about a lot of that specific stuff. But I like the idea of playing around with that, like having a small subset, like almost like a political thing, like, or a societal custom. Like some people are like, cool, yeah, metal me up, homie, and then other people are like, nah, I actually like the size I'm at. I'll stay this way. You get like these two sort of very distinct schools of thought, if you will, from a cultural perspective. I think stuff like that, taking stuff that, again, we're kind of thinking about this in a conceptual standpoint, and we're thinking especially about how it'll apply to designing a regency that is playable from an RTS perspective, and then designing like compelling units based around that. And we can extrapolate that out into stuff that's actually compelling and makes them feel grounded and somewhat real in the context of story framing. Yeah, exactly. So like replacement bones would basically be iron, right? Or steel or whatever. They would be some sort of metal, and that would be one way to do it. And so you could have people who like. I mean, you could even present, if you wanted to, if you were so inclined, you could present this as like a core element of characters' growth, where literal growth in this case, where maybe they get super mangled in a battle or something, and they're forced to make a decision like, if I want to keep being a Keltar, if I want to keep being a soldier and don't want to retire and be disabled or whatever, then I need to become metal bone. I need to get metal boned. and I need to undergo that process. And I can still decide if I want to inhibit the growth and stop myself from being large, eventually growing to be super large. But like that, there's something about me that's going to change now. Or maybe we make it so that it's a irreversible process. Like theoretically, it would still be possible to stop yourself from growing super big, but maybe that choice isn't available to you if you're injured in a certain way. But yeah, anyway, I'm just thinking about all this shit. I'm thinking like, oh, it's actually really cool to. I think it's really cool to imagine things like this. That you it's stuff that's somehow relatable to us as humans, but very different than anything we've ever had to deal with ourselves. Like you could draw parallels to like, oh, we had to get surgery and it was like an impossible decision or whatever. But there's an element there that like, you know, syncs up with what we can relate to without feeling like you're making the race itself, the organism itself, too relatable to humans. It still feels very different and than anything we've dealt with. So I don't know, just some musings. You said every non-underscore folder and website repo safe to delete. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You figured it out. All right, you said to pull though. Yeah, exactly. So I guess if I discard those, I can pull. Is there something I'm supposed to do here? Viker? I don't actually have these files. I guess there's some problem. I guess if I just delete this folder, it might work. I don't know, I'll try that. I don't know if you want me to do anything else with if I have to re-implement these or something. Oh, I think it was because of, wait, no, actually I have no idea why it was like that. I guess it was because of the caps. I couldn't tell you why else. Actually, I am kind of confused. I don't seem to have the index files anymore. The Xibalba index or the Stark. Oh, I guess maybe those didn't get downloaded. No, actually, I have no idea what's happened there. Here we go. I got nothing right now. I mean, apparently I still have them in my ignore folder. Oh no, I don't. Oh, I must have control X'd them, and that's what happened. All right, so now if I build this, I won't delete everything and break everything. We hope. That seems fine. Oh yeah, I guess we should actually give this a title. This should be the No Frauds Club. There you go. Folders need to be capital. I can fix that. Go ahead and push that. There was something else I needed to adjust, but I actually don't remember what it was. It was something... I feel like it was something here. Maybe it was something in here. That issue is still there by the looks of it. I guess I should probably build. That might be why it was still there, actually. Oh, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, Shambler. Well, for sure, the number of people who have been exiled from various Kens would definitely constitute enough to have at least like an upstart faction or something like that. Okay, that did fix that. Cool. All right. Looks like it's back now, which is nice. Good shit. But yeah, it is funny that you mentioned the whole like mercenary thing. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there is already a mercenary unit for the Ember Seat called a Disgrace, which you can imagine why. It's a Keltar unit. So there will be in-game representations of mercenaries from the Keltar. And I also like the idea of perhaps a sort of rogue Ken that has already lost all of their honor. And so they sort of look out for themselves and their brethren in some capacity. But like they're seeking to somehow find meaning. Like the grim reality is that a lot of Keltar who end up suicide. Well, I kind of gave away the fucking plot there. Who end up exiled end up suiciding because they so much of their self-worth and their sense of being and purpose is linked to their people. And so if they fuck up somehow and make a grave error that can't be rectified, like murdering, somebody else, a Keltar Khan murdering a fellow Keltar, just get fucked. So. That's the whole reason why they're exiled anyway, is the idea that, like, you can't do Keltar killing. Like, that's not allowed. However, it's not entirely the full story. Because if we look down here at the Keltar, civil conflicts have happened. And they still do sometimes occur. Now, there's a line here that says individual Keltar often side with their ken over their species, in large part due to their race's brutal history. Now, there are going to be some cases where there's some exceptions to the rules and you don't get exiled for Keltar Khan. Very, very limited cases, you will actually see you'll actually see some situations where the what would you call it? Like, some cases you will actually see Keltar fighting other Keltar in organized battles, like Ken versus Ken. But usually this is like so insanely last resort. Like, to give you an example, this would be like the moral equivalent of if like two countries decided to start nuking each other in the US or in the world that we live in. The idea of like basically the moral dilemmas here, or if like I guess nukes would also concern people who don't care about the moral side of it but want to live. So if you just imagine it was like gas attacks or something like that, like both sides of the fight, both Kens that were fighting each other, would be seen as like heretical in some capacity. And that's actually how you could see an entire Ken being exiled, right? Um, which is something they wouldn't want to do, but they would probably have to if there was like, Ken on Ken warfare, so to speak. Yeah, or invading or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's supposed to be a union of states, union of Kens under the banner of Keltar, the guiding empire. And if you're gonna start attacking each other, then that's obviously no good. So there are, of course, some cases where certain Kens have decided to split from Keltarak. Those are pretty few and far in between. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're hostile to them. Again, they have this built-in sort of understanding that their regency, their race, I keep saying those interchangeably, obviously, but their race, the Keltar race, doesn't have this sort of like they're not they're not fully available as like, oh yeah, we can definitely just smash everything in that sense. Like, yeah, we can deal with this. Like, no, man. Like you guys are outnumbered by a lot of the other regions. Like you guys might be the least populous regency in the whole game in terms of numbers. So yeah, you can't really be fighting each other to the same degree as the other regencies can. They can get away with it a lot more from a purely logistic standpoint. And then there's like the whole moral and cultural aspects of it that prevent them from wanting to do that. In many respects, they're working against their own like sort of evolution, social and physical. So when you think about that, like there's not really a whole lot of justification. Like you have to go out of your way to justify why Keltar would fight each other, and if you want a Keltar versus Keltar battle, and then there's like enough framing and like, oh, maybe it makes sense in cases like of multiplayer, like 1v1s or whatever. So well, yeah, because if two Kens are going at it, like what are you gonna do? Start going in and trying to instill? Like, no, if you intervene now, if the Keltarak Empire intervenes, like the larger body intervenes, you're just gonna cause more bloodshed, obviously. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure what the fallout would look like. Now, Vic mentioned some exiled. I assume he meant exiled. High tier Keltar units that are huge and sort of mutated or something like. Yeah, well, I imagine it could be one of those cases where, like, without the proper medical treatment, if you're an exiled unit of some sort, if you don't get the proper medical treatment and you happen to have like not had the growth limiter installed in your hormones or whatever, like you're probably on a ticking time clock, aren't you? So you might have like tried some desperate self surgery, or you might have tried some like other gene therapy or something that could have fucked you up in other ways. Just thinking about all the possibilities there, like yeah, for sure. I don't know if the Keltar themselves would ever employ exiled units. I'll think about that, but I guess that's why you mentioned that maybe not exiled, they should be profane or something like that. Um, those could probably be part of the bloodline tech branch, actually. I do like the idea that you're giving out there, Shambler, of like I'm not sure if you've taken this from some other place, but like the idea of basically being like, oh, you want to rejoin the Empire? Well, you're gonna have to bring us the ultimate trophy. Like your whole Ken is disgraced because of something. That might happen more often than you think. That might not even require you fighting another Ken or like committing Keltrakan as a Ken. That might just be like, oh, you lost in a disgraceful battle, like you disgraced commander because you couldn't even defeat like X Regency or Y Regency or whatever. And so you could imagine situations where like, yeah, okay, we need to prove that we can still be of use, that we aren't weak. that we can bounce back or whatever. And picking up on a Keltar Ken that had just suffered some sort of loss like that is actually quite interesting, because if you imagine a situation where the player is participating as Keltar and they initially are kind of low on numbers, right? Even for Keltar, the explanation would be pretty natural. Oh, the Ken just suffered this massive defeat. Now they got to reclaim their honor. And so, maybe you would show the massive defeat as like the first mission or something, where your mission goes from like bad to worse, and you have to find some way to like claim a Pyrrhic victory or whatever. And then you'd witness the reset. It could also be that like it's a linked story where the first chapter you're fighting against the Keltar themselves, and then you switch perspectives to them and pick up the pieces afterwards. That's a common sort of, if you want to call it a trope, that's a common thing that could happen for Keltar. Now the Keltar are not planned to be involved in Symmetry Sickness, and they are planned to be the second tutorial. So or second, not tutorial, the second campaign. So I don't actually know what's going to go on there. That to me seems a bit tough, actually. But yeah, I think there's a lot of can I remember all of my campaign names? I already did. GG, homie. The Githrovin one is probably the one I'm least happy with, to be honest. Did I actually give it the right title? Yeah. Oh no, I didn't. Fuck. Owned. I also saw that earlier Veek mentioned the worker name. Yeah, Backbone, by the way. Interestingly enough, we appear to have different margins in some of these for some reason. These are superfluous, obviously. That's weird. I wonder why. I actually have the plot and sort of like general progression fully written out for the Psychoran campaign. There's certain things that I still need to figure out, certain questions that I still need to answer, but overall, I think they're in pretty good positions, actually. Oh yeah, for sure. I wonder what their take would be on that. Actually, I'm trying to think about like what they might actually say in such a situation. Kind of interesting. Oh, maybe I just needed to control F5 for some reasons. I guess that wouldn't surprise me. Let's try it again. Yeah, I actually do have to control F5. That's so weird. Each individual page. I guess it's just because of the browser cache. Perhaps it's even what you would expect, actually. But yeah, I wonder what they would say. Like, if you could prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you were under the effects of mind control, or you were misled in some way. Like, self-defense doesn't count, obviously, although it probably still traumatizes the fuck out of people. So if you were led to believe that there was like a threat to your life and you could somehow demonstrate that, I think that could make a pretty big difference in your case, so to speak. So, yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Whatever was causing the mind control, because the scale of power is such that you're probably not just controlling one Keltar if you're able to control minds. That's the other thing too to think about, is that like we're talking about like, oh, what could be the story justification for a rogue Ken? You know, an entire clan of Keltar, entire family of Keltar. You know, these things are huge, right? Like each you could equate the total population of the Earth currently. Like that's probably the scale we're talking about for individual Kens. So each Ken would be like 10 billion or whatever. Now we still say that they're not very populous, because if you compare that to the scale of everything else, it's actually quite small. I suppose logistically, it doesn't really make that much sense if you're. Well, I guess it's actually fine. Basically, you would very rarely see multiple Keltar Kens operating in the same space. I think that's the key distinction. It's sort of like my plan for the Zerg before I moved settings and made my own, is that the Zerg would have like tendrils, and these tendrils would be like the catch-all term for like a giant, whatever the Tyranid term is. It's like a hive or queen or something. I don't remember what it is. Hive world, maybe. Something like that is I think Craft World is for Eldar. I forget what the term is for like a swarm of Tyranid. But basically, you would very rarely see multiple converge in the same spot, just because the scale is so massive. You don't need more than one tendril in the area. In the rare cases where it does happen, you're fucked for sure. Hive fleet, okay, yeah, that would be it then. I imagine there are cases where multiple hive fleets do converge, but they would be very limited. I would guess the cases where that happens is very limited, because that would only be pulled out in cases where you needed like so many, like literally a double the Tyranid, and Tyranid are already pretty fucking numerous with just one hive fleet. So that's sort of what I was thinking, is like you just rarely see direct cooperation between multiple Kens, because you just wouldn't need it. Like Keltar are so powerful that they would like sort of have their own like sort of individual thing. Yeah. So that's kind of what I was getting at, is like you would the idea that you would need multiple hive fleets to converge in one spot is like kind of ludicrous. Now Keltar, it's a little bit more understandable if they do show up. Like logistically, you can place them in the same area, but again, the idea that they would be needed, probably not. As far as psychic potential goes, certainly could be a case for them to have learned. Like it's possible to attune yourself psychically using technology. So it's not something that you need to have like a built-in sort of genetic aspect to it. You can solve the problem of not having genetic or biological predispositions to psychic power. You can solve that through technology. So there's a chance that some Keltar units would distribute that sort of behavior, or exemplify that sort of behavior. I'm not 100% sure if I would go that route, or to what degree I would go with that route, but it is possible. So I'm thinking that maybe we could actually show the Ken being disgraced in the Keltar campaign that I'm planning, funnily enough. Um, we could actually have the first couple missions be like theoretically you're winning and then you lose and you like suffer a massive setback, and then like the rest of the campaign would switch to um, sort of absolving you of your mistake by way of actually trying to you know complete some other service. So that could certainly be an element. Well, there would definitely be some sort of like uh they would definitely have some way to neutralize hostile spellcasters of sorts, and that's irrespective of if they're using psychics directly or through technology or something else. So yeah, you'd probably have some sort of like I can't beat my enemy, so I got to join them in some aspect of it, that sort of thing, right? Where you need some sort of answer for sure. It's going to be pretty neat when we have the banter system in place for units. There's this I haven't actually made this observation about Warhammer until recently, but like the Warhammer 40,000 RTSs have this element where like when orcs attack something, they scream "Wog," and you'll get like lines of banter or whatever from some Space Marines and Eldar and stuff. We're gonna have that for individual units, obviously, since we're planning on like having really high scale stuff, but still having a lot of unit individuality, where like individual units have their own unique unit responses and so on. You'll actually get certain conditions for banter. So one of them will be like engaging the enemy or whatever. There will be certainly ones where like you get a kill with this unit, and we're going to make sure that they're sparsely added so that it's not like overwhelming the player in terms of audio cues. But like the Oros and as well as the Keltar are probably going to be quite vocal with their war cries and stuff. And so you'll get that element of like you got different responses depending on which regency you're playing as and which regency you're fighting as well. And so I really like that system. I ever since I came up with the idea of it for Cosmonarchy Brood War, where I had the idea of like the Hierophant sort of like mockingly laughing at its victims as it was like chasing them down and slowing them and stuff. Like that in my head, imagining that happening is like really thematic. And I'm kind of surprised that other RTS games haven't actually tried that. Like the Warhammer 40,000 games were barely RTSs at the end of the day, especially the second game, which was more of like an RPG game. It would have been really nice, I think, if they leaned into that more. If other RTSs leaned into that more, rather, because obviously 40K actually did it with their units. I think they could have gone further with it as well, but they at least did something. Whereas I can't think of very many other RTS games where that actually have sort of like units like that without sacrificing scale elsewhere. Like I think the RTTs, like Company of Heroes, probably have that just because they have no fucking other content, so they kind of have to. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like you could imagine he's there's a different coloration to the to how the yelling is interpreted or whatever. It's pretty neat. Definitely a lot of potential going on here. I suppose we didn't actually dip our toes into tier 2, but I can write down some ideas that I have for these guys anyway, and then I'll probably close out the stream there because I do need to take a walk. So if we jump into our new folder structure, I can open Regencies and then find Keltar. Oh, it actually was a problem. I didn't know that. So what if I go here? Mwah. Wow, who would have guessed? I don't know if you have any ideas as to why this isn't centering properly. Maybe it's an image thing or something. It was like this even before I changed the image, in case you're wondering if that's an element of it. And we still need to like shade the images and stuff. But yeah, that's pretty nice. Thanks. So we talked about what did we talk about? We talked about anti-specialist spellcaster units. We also talked about absurd growth potential with augmentations. We'll say technological / implants. Well, I just know it was fine before we used this new implementation, so there's got to be something different going on there. So we talked about. We'll actually move this up here because it's more of like a. Yeah. Okay. Then there was the idea of like disgraced Ken's move it. Are given supremely dangerous tasks in order to reclaim their honor, stuff like that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else gameplay-wise that we mentioned. Obviously, we have the idea of like the units that are pretty big, but I already covered that from a narrative or like a setting world building thing. Yeah, no worries about that. It's pretty minor, but it's just very distracting because there's something center viewed right below it and right above it. I guess it's just because it's an older version of Firefox from before the Chromium update. Or no, I think it is still Chromium. I don't know then. It's just an older version of Chromium, probably. So yeah, we got some pretty good ideas here. Obviously, there's some more work to be done as far as like the unit plannings and stuff. We only added the 2 buildings there. But it was still pretty productive in terms of like shadowboxing certain ideas for the Keltar and like trying to figure out what they would mostly be deployed with or whatever. I guess we can add that as well to our list of ideas here. If we jump into retail 2, we can jump into here and then create our little comment section and say, we'll say ideas. And we'll say, players Ken becomes disgraced due to an unforeseen defeat early on in the campaign, resulting in an impossible task to reclaim their honor. So that was the idea that I had earlier about like working that into a campaign context. We obviously did have the idea of like I don't think this would fit in this campaign, but I'll write it down anyway. Is like Keltracon. Say well, we could just say like a disgraced Ken searches has fully divested from the from Keltarak. I think that's the spelling, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Keltarak, and now serves its time. Well, we could say now lends its impressive services to the highest bidder. That could be one option, obviously. A lot of options, a lot of things that we could do, and pretty exciting stuff, obviously, because of the fact that we can just continue playing around with these concepts, both for units, as seen here, and also for like narrative elements or story elements or whatever. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. Obviously, we got this nice little technology demo that we did in the opening hour of this, where we ported some more pages and whatnot. It's pretty good. We'll just keep porting some more stuff over time. You can check out some more stuff on this specific page if you're curious about that, or if it matters to you. And yeah, exciting stuff. I guess you could just expect generally quicker website updates. There's a lot less resistance to starting on a website update now that I can just freely and quickly do this stuff. So that's pretty epic. I'll go ahead and close this because apparently my TOC now works on my other browser, which is nice. And I can close this because this is done. And then I guess I can just git push, git add, git commit, more formatting, and notes, git push. Hell yeah. Shout out to my Veeker. Okay. And I think that's it. I think we're out of here. TBH. We didn't add too many units, like I mentioned, but that's okay. We added some, and we got some ideas. And yeah, thanks Chandler in particular for doing the whole shadowboxing ideas and stuff. And Vic did a little bit too, so appreciate you guys. And Roller Skates, you said you in the chat, so appreciate you. And you're still not in the Discord server. Start punching in the head. And I guess that's pretty much it. So yeah. We'll see you tomorrow on Vic's channel for more engine stuff. And we'll see you the day after tomorrow on this channel for more of this stuff. So, bye.